Picture a medieval banquet. Knights, nobles, and enough body odor to send a dragon gasping for fresh air. The rumor mill, powered by cheese fumes no less, would have you believe medieval folks treated bathing like a VIP pass to the Black Plague fan club. Modern noses picture everyone wading through grime, smelling like a cheese wheel after a dungeon crawl. But hold tight to your scented soaps. Public bathhouses were as common as juicy gossip in medieval Europe. Townsfolk flocked there to scrub, soak, and swap the latest dirt. If you think your gym smells bad, try sharing a tub with 10 merchants and their cheese rations. Linen underclothes were layered beneath it all, for style and stain protection, while households developed regular rituals for washing hair and scrubbing teeth. No medieval crest, but parsley garnishes earned bonus points. Sure, bathing earned a bad rap during plague outbreaks, the logic being that opening your pores gave the plague a red carpet entrance. But that was the exception, not the rule. Rural peasants? Maybe closer to muck. City dwellers? Strict street cleaning guilds kept things relatively fragrant. Ironically, the Renaissance snagged the Oscar for Most Likely to Stink, stealing the show from the Middle Ages' surprisingly decent hygiene record. Take that, Shakespeare! Alongside hygiene challenges, dietary habits among common folk were often oversimplified. Imagine a medieval peasant gloomily poking at a bowl of lumpy gray mush, because, naturally, that's all they ever ate, right? This lonely gruel bowl has earned its place as history's ultimate sad desk salad, fueling the myth that peasants subsisted on this bland goop day in, day out. But reality, like a surprise turnip sneaking into the stew, is far more flavorful. Sure, gruel existed. It was the Middle Ages version of plain toast, filling, forgettable, and about as Instagrammable as a mud puddle. But peasant menus were way more varied and way less miserable than you'd guess. Bread was the daily star. Hearty stuff, rougher than a knight's handshake, not just sawdust compressed into loaf form. Fields and forests pitched in with onions, beans, leeks, kale, apples, and berries. Dairy played a strong supporting role. Cows, goats, and sheep generously offered their cheesy gifts. Fish and the occasional unlucky rabbit livened up dull weeks, and on holidays, peasants feasted on stews, pies, puddings, and enough communal ale to make anyone forget their dirt floor. Grim gray mush only? Even medieval peasants demanded the full carb and veggie combo meal, with a little cheese on top for good measure. While food consumption paints a picture of daily life, gender roles add another layer to societal understanding. History loves to paint ancient women as passive wallpaper, lurking quietly in the background of their own stories. The popular myth hands them about as much control over their destinies as a houseplant stuck at a garden party. They're cast as little more than decorative property, paraded around like well-groomed livestock, destined for a lifetime of silence and embroidery. But reality? Well, it's messier and far more entertaining. Egyptian women could own land, run businesses, and even haul their ex-husbands to court, probably for more than just snoring. Over in Mesopotamia, priestesses wielded serious religious and political power, likely terrifying generations of would-be dictators into submission. Some societies actually wrote laws granting women divorce rights, meaning ancient ladies were brokering deals long before reality TV made it fashionable. If ancient women truly had zero agency, why do so many hieroglyphs show queens rolling their eyes at pharaohs? Claiming all ancient women were powerless is like saying their diets consisted solely of rocks and hope. A crunchy, exaggerated myth at best. Perceptions of women's status lead us to consider general physical characteristics attributed to the era. Ever heard that everyone in the past was a stumpy, gummy hobbit? Turns out medieval peasants weren't lining up to join Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompa squad. The myth goes that pre-modern folks were all short and toothless by 30, like history was one endless rehearsal for the world's least intimidating gnashers. Why do we buy this? Blame misleading averages. Sure, average heights were lower, but that doesn't mean everyone was knuckle-walking. Nutrition and social class played starring roles. The rich dined well, stood tall, and flashed enviable molars, while the poor made do with porridge and toothpicks. Primitive floss, basically. Records reveal plenty of ancient tall guys. Some medieval knights cleared 6 feet without the aid of platform shoes. And teeth? Archaeologists keep digging up skeletons with shockingly complete smiles. So why does the short and toothless cliché persist? Simple. It's the perfect excuse to avoid the dentist. If everyone was toothless, how else did they scare off vampires? So next time your dentist suggests Invisalign, remember, ancient societies didn't need it, but just don't tell your orthodontist. Physical living conditions like stature and health prompt us to reflect on medieval domestic environments. Imagine living in a stone refrigerator, minus the snacks. That's the classic medieval castle image. Endless shivers, teeth chatter setting the soundtrack for halls haunted more by drafts than ghosts. It's a fairy tale with a frosty twist. Most folks picture castles as damp, dank prisons, where the only warmth came from wistful summer daydreams. Sure, central heating was a no-show, unless you count the occasional invitation to the local blacksmith for a heated debate indoors. But roaring fireplaces did exist, ideal for toasty toes if you could elbow your way close enough. Tapestries on walls and rushes on floors promised insulation, which mostly meant you dodged hypothermia rather than cozied up. Windows? Tiny, designed to keep invaders out, and sunlight, unfortunately, locked out too. Nobles nailed the frozen chic look, layering furs like it was haute couture, whether to dazzle guests or just keep fingers attached. Chilly? Definitely. But those candlelit echoes lent plenty of drama, and guaranteed plenty of stubbed toes. Later medieval apartments got a bit unexpectedly toasty. So the next time your landlord skips on heating, just remember, in the 13th century, your best bet was to marry your fireplace. The nature of medieval dwellings ties into the broader cultural emphasis, especially religious devotion. Picture a medieval peasant glued to their prayer bench like it's Netflix and chill. Did they ever get a time out from church? The classic myth paints serfs as holy marathons, kneeling themselves rigid into hand-me-down pews passed down by generations of new parishioners. With saints' days stacked like a holy Jenga tower, sunrise prayers, and a calendar bloated with festivals, medieval life sounds like one never-ending spiritual binge-watch. But here's the plot twist. Between prayers, parishioners squeezed in plenty of gossip, feasting, and the occasional pagan-style shenanigan. Even during a Latin Mass, most folks didn't catch a single word, so they mentally scrolled their to-do lists or counted ceiling cracks. Multitasking, medieval edition, village festivals, folk superstitions, and a killer joke could steal the spotlight from church formalities faster than you can say, hallelujah. Fitbits would have exploded from the sprint out of sermons, especially when fasting meant yet another fish dinner. Let's be real. Monks probably invented vows of silence just to dodge awkward chit-chat about saints' knucklebones. The church preached piety, but not even confessionals caught every wild tale after a midsummer night's revelry. Religious preoccupations also influenced medical practices during the period. Think medieval doctors just hurled leeches at every ailment and hoped for the best? Well, you're not entirely wrong. But there's a lot more to the tale than a writhing bucket of bloodsuckers and a chorus of desperate Hail Marys. Our mental image of medieval medicine is leech therapy paired with frantic religious rituals, painting every cure as either squishy or spiritual. Leeches were basically the era's version of, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" Beneath all that slime lay the centuries-old belief in humors, the body's 4 mysterious fluids. So diagnosis meant balancing your bile, which usually involved more bloodletting, leeches optional but popular. Meanwhile, monasteries weren't just candlelit crypts. They doubled as surprisingly skilled hospitals, perfumed with incense and echoed by Gregorian chants. But wait, there's more! Medieval medics brewed herbal potions and even toyed with surgery, sometimes wielding booze or opium for anesthesia, because nothing says cutting edge like a slightly woozy barber wielding a scalpel. Ancient Greek, Roman, and Arabic texts got translated faster than anyone could botch them, blending shaky scientific reasoning with a side of spiritual footnotes. When plagues struck, doctors responded with quarantines and early hospitals. Take that, leech lobbyists! Sure, superstition ran amok, but medieval ingenuity and a proto-scientific method sneakily slipped in, like rational thoughts crashing a ghost story gathering. Understanding healthcare beliefs helps clarify misconceptions about medieval knowledge, such as views on the earth. Picture this: a pirate nervously peering over the bow, fretting his ship might plunge into the abyss at the world's edge. A cosmic waterslide of terror, right? We love that sea shanty myth that everyone in the Middle Ages thought Earth was flatter than a pancake on a diet. But the real joke? The only thing consistently flat back then was the medieval sense of humor. Long before Columbus packed his snacks, ancient Greek brainiacs, think Eratosthenes, had already done the math, literally, and declared Earth a sphere. Using shadows, ship hulls vanishing on the horizon, and some slick geometry, Eratosthenes even calculated Earth's girth with the precision of a smug globe salesman. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and Europe's educated elite were clued in. The flat Earth fable? A Victorian-era invention, spun by overactive imaginations desperate to paint our ancestors as hopelessly clueless. Sorry, internet conspiracy theorists, but if Earth really were flat, cats would have trashed the whole thing centuries ago. Columbus worried more about running out of biscotti than falling off the map. Beliefs about the world coincide with assumptions about life milestones and longevity. Contrary to popular myth, medieval folks weren't all tying the knot at 12 and kicking the bucket before they hit their midlife crisis, mainly because there were no convertibles to buy or midlife crises to ponder. The tale insists every medieval human was married by 12, popped out 7 kids by 20, and was conveniently dead by 30, probably right in the middle of their wolf-themed birthday cake. So where did this turbocharged life timeline come from? Blame the bungled life expectancy stats. Medieval numbers get skewed thanks to sky-high infant mortality rates. Think of it as the original reason childhood got child-proofed. Survive teething, moat drowning, and uninvited plague guests, and you actually stood a decent shot at making it to your 50s or 60s. And about those 12-year-old brides, unless you hit puberty at warp speed and already owned a goat, marrying that young was pretty rare. Most women walked down the aisle in their late teens or 20s. Child marriages were less common than the Black Plague itself, and definitely less contagious. Bottom line, medieval peasants didn't cark it right after their 30th birthday, unless, of course, someone spiked the cake. Life expectancy narratives contribute to the overarching theme of hardship during the Middle Ages. Forget spa days. Medieval peasant life was basically an endless obstacle course, with zero prize money and no participation trophies. The usual tale? Peasants were forever doomed to slog through misery and sweat, as if every dawn kicked off with a raven squawking, "Rise and suffer." Forget trendy athleisure and Zen yoga flows. These folks hauled themselves out of bed in rags, grinding from sunrise to sunset on chores so bland that even gruel seemed gourmet. But hold on to your turnips. Real life wasn't just mud and misery. Medieval existence was a mixed bag. Sure, the work was brutal. CrossFit fans, note this: the original full-body workout required zero lycra, but peasants actually scored more holidays than your typical office drone. Thanks to religious festivals, time off often meant more freedom than your average Zoom call. Life expectancy stats sound grim, mainly because infant survival was a gamble. But if you made it past childhood, you got to enjoy lively village fairs, tight-knit communities, and the blissful fact that no plague ever traveled via reply all. At least when stuff hit the fan, it wasn't just a surprise Wi-Fi blackout. Despite tales of misery, cultural ideals like beauty standards offer contrast. Rapunzel's calling, she wants her trademark back. We've all bought the fairy tale pitch, golden tresses cascading from impossible towers, like every damsel is auditioning for a Pantene ad. The legend? Long, sun-kissed hair has forever been the world's beauty gold standard. But hold up, Goldilocks, history's got a plot twist. From ancient Rome's parade of rich brunettes and bold wigs, to medieval Europe where practicality often outshone glamour, some knights probably needed a GPS to spot a blonde. Hair ideals were anything but static. Long locks often meant status. If you weren't a serf dodging lice and pitchforks, maybe you could splurge on extra shampoo. And guess what? Ancient Greece didn't exactly paint maidens blonde. In fact, actual blondes were so rare in Renaissance Europe that Venetian women risked chemical burns just to bleach their hair to flaxen perfection. Wigs, dyes, and hairpieces let maidens sample golden glory well before Hollywood glam stepped in. So next time someone drops iconic beauty, remember, Rapunzel's look was just one tower in the vast hairstyle kingdom. Images of idealized appearances contrast with the realities of urban medieval environments. Forget the romantic images of quaint medieval towns. Think more along the lines of a rodent rave. While we were busy daydreaming about knights and fair maidens, rats were snatching VIP passes to every banquet without even a courtesy RSVP. Medieval towns and castles practically rolled out the red carpet. Cramped quarters, heaps of food scraps, and sanitation standards so grim they'd make modern garbage collectors weep. The streets, littered with refuse, were perfect for rodent picnics, while cracks in walls and beams served as rat superhighways, allowing furry little ninjas to zip through buildings undetected. And don't think King's got a rodent-free zone. Castle kitchens and pantries? A playground for four-legged freeloaders who never shelled out a single coin in rent. Whether you lived in squalor or splendor, the true lords of the manor were busy chomping on your cheese. People tried cats, traps, and even ferrets as medieval pest control, but the rats just turned leftovers into their own all-night house parties. Unfortunately, this rodent residency wasn't just a nibble on the goodies. It chomped down on public health too, helping diseases like the plague move in and crash the scene. The unsanitary conditions of towns and castles set the stage for the militaristic image of knights. Picture this: a squad of gleaming knights swinging swords from dawn to dusk like their gym memberships depended on it. Pop culture eats this up. Unstoppable metal maniacs dueling amid CGI fireballs and dramatic soundtrack crescendos. But if knights really fought non-stop, medieval Europe would have run out of helmets and airs by Saturday. Here's the kicker. Our sword-swinging stars actually spent way more time polishing armor than cracking skulls. Movies and fantasy novels suggest knights barely had time to lift their visors, but in reality, life was more Laundry Day than Lord of the Rings. Most days meant grueling training, endless gear inspections, managing estates, and feasting, complete with gravy stains. The only thing knights truly slayed daily? Their never-ending chore list. Real battles were rare cameo appearances, not marathon sessions. Knights might spend an afternoon teaching peasants about crop rotation or debating whose elbows trespassed on dinner-table real estate. Chivalry was sometimes more about napkin etiquette than enemy casualties. The warrior lifestyle also intersects with social structures that dictated access to education. Imagine a medieval classroom, a monk, a noble, and crickets. According to legend, medieval education was a VIP club so exclusive, your ticket in was proving you knew someone with a castle key or a heavily bookmarked Bible. Local gossip even suggests villagers taught their cows more Latin than their own kids. To be fair, Milky the cow had moo down in 3 tenses. True, monasteries ran the literacy show, with monks doubling as proto-librarians and copy-paste prose centuries before Quattril was a thing. Noble offspring got private tutoring on reading, writing, and, most crucially, how not to turn the family gravy boat into a disaster at feasts. But here's the medieval plot twist. By the 12th century, urban schools started inviting merchant and artisan kids to the party. Finally, alphabet soup for the masses. Some clever peasants even cracked reading and math, handy for business deals, contracts, or dodging a creatively enforced goat tax. So no, education wasn't a free-for-all, but literacy had a pass out of the cloister, and sometimes into surprisingly crafty bookkeeping. Educational exclusivity influences our understanding of language use and communication. Picture this: every street brawl punctuated by thee and thou, and fast food orders delivered in flawless iambic pentameter. Good sir, a cheeseburger, hold the lettuce, thus. Hilarious, right? It's a common myth that everyone in Shakespeare's day sounded like they'd stumbled straight out of his plays, formal, flowery, and as cryptic as a riddle wrapped in a doublet. But let's be honest, a typical Elizabethan didn't stroll into the market quoting Hamlet, unless the baker was secretly auditioning for Drama Queen of the Year. Shakespearean language was high art, tailor-made for theater-goers, and rarely drifted into the noisy bustle of daily life. Much of his vocabulary was either invented or fancifully stitched together for dramatic flair, not casual small talk over yesterday's bread. And the accent? Picture a pirate with a sinus infection. Definitely not the crisp BBC tones you'd expect. Ironically, the American accent edges closer to Shakespeare's original than posh London English does. So if everyone actually spoke like the Bard, Elizabethan Tinder profiles would have been a lot weirder. Sure. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Might still get a swipe right, just don't expect anyone to recite Macbeth while folding laundry. Language and customs together shed light on daily living standards, including sanitation facilities. Picture this: you need a bathroom break in ancient Rome. Now imagine the nearest toilet is a marble bench, your neighbor perched suspiciously close, whispering gossip instead of passing toilet paper. Think modern public restrooms are awkward. Romans invented open floor plan with a vengeance. Long benches, 0 partitions, just you, your tunic, and a dozen strangers perfecting the art of avoiding eye contact. The myth says Romans lived in luxury, marble, mosaics, fine dining. But lurking behind those elegant facades were communal latrines, rows of keyhole-shaped seats carved for all kinds of business, with absolutely no concept of privacy. Here's a flush of fact. Flowing water ran beneath these benches, whisking waste away. An ancient urban miracle. Toilet paper? Ha! Try a communal stick topped with a well-used sponge, the infamous tersorium. The only thing grosser than sharing a throne with your boss? Sharing that sponge. These public toilets were the social media of their day. Deals were struck, rumors hatched, and for the bold, graffiti was etched into history. Got a late-night emergency? Grab a chamber pot and pray your downstairs neighbor isn't hosting ancient Roman room service. Think office small talk is awkward? Try running into your senator mid-squat. No filters, guaranteed.